Welcome to the Lobby Card, a compilation of film reviews from the fringes. So this is basically a collection of reviews from the past few weeks on this channel. And tonight we have a very mixed bag of reviews, to say the least. So we have a very unusual film about family, we have another film about dystopian game shows, and another movie about carnivorous plants. But first up, we have a brand new review for a film that was actually pretty unique for its time, I reckon. So the premise of Young Guns from 1988 is basically an origin story for Billy the Kid that also allowed Hollywood to shoehorn as many young Brat Pack actors into the one movie as they could quickly teach to ride a horse. So they were hoping to revive the Western genre with this one, which they successfully did, because the Western genre hadn't done a whole lot since Clint Eastwood temporarily hung up his spurs before coming back out of retirement with Unforgiven. So basically the premise of Young Guns is that Murphy, played by Jack Palance, who I most enjoyed in the horror movie Alone in the Dark, not the new one, the original one, he's trying to seize control of the cattle industry in Lincoln County. And John Tunstall, played by General Zod himself, Terence Stamp, is the only thing that stands in his way. Well, him and his young team of regulators, or the Young Guns of the title, that is. So Murphy keeps accusing poor John Tunstall of having these regulators kneel before Zod. Educating young boys, as it were. From there, the whole thing basically degenerates into a wild orgy of Wild West violence and mayhem that probably looks especially violent if you've never been exposed to a spaghetti western. Which brings me to a big part of the success of Young Guns. It really did expose we young Gen Xers of the time to an entire genre that had been the exclusive domain of our fathers and grandfathers. Italian movies with men with no names, inexplicable wardrobe choices that appeared more Milan than New Mexico, and lips that never quite synced to the wild dialogue. So these were westerns that were more dangerous than most of John Wayne's filmography, and Young Guns was a bit of a homage to the spaghetti western, really. And it opens with possibly the most badass credit sequence in cinema, with the possible exception of The Devil's Rejects, and then it moves along with a steady clip and a near-perfect plot structure that unfortunately did elude a lot of the spaghetti westerns. So this movie did for the western, or the spaghetti western, what Jaws did for the monster movie. It was a risky move, but really paid off and revived a whole genre. And Young Guns would make a great double bill with Sam Peckinpah's similarly subversive western, Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid. And I reckon something nice to enjoy with this one might be some salted beef jerky and some good quality American whiskey. It seems like a fairly mainstream movie in 2025, but Young Guns was very unusual for 1988. You've likely already seen it, but if not, it's a fun ride. Definitely check out Young Guns from 1988, pretty widely available. So Sonny Boy is a movie made in 1989. And it really is a crime that it's so largely forgotten. The premise of this very eccentric and quirky film is that a two-bit thief called Weasel, played by Brad Dourif, kills a young couple, and then he steals their Cadillac. So Weasel takes the car to his boss, local mobster Slew, and unbeknownst to Weasel, there's a bouncing baby boy in the back seat. So Slew wants to sell the baby boy along with the Cadillac to his underworld connections, but his de facto wife Pearl isn't having a bar of it. She wants to raise the boy as her own. And at this point, I think it's important to note that Pearl is played by none other than David Carradine in drag. So something a bit different there for you. David Carradine's something of a virtuoso in this movie. He not only plays the most original and intriguing role of his career, but he also composed and performed the very catchy theme song from the film. I think it's called Maybe It Ain't. So basically this crime family lives on a compound in the desert somewhere in New Mexico, I think. And they seem to run roughshod over the town with complete impunity. And Slew and Pearl end up raising the child, Sonny Boy, as a kind of wild child. And he grows into adulthood. And they use him to do their bidding, which is usually killing people they've had business disagreements with, or people who've outlived their purpose. And how do I talk about this movie? Well, in one word, Sonny Boy from 1989 is amazing. So it's quirky, surreal, endearing, and it really is quite unlike anything else you've ever seen. And I don't think any of that's hyperbole or exaggeration. The entire epic that is Sonny Boy feels dreamlike, it feels otherworldly, and it would feel implausible if it wasn't handled so expertly by everyone involved, especially David Carradine. And I reckon this might be the most David Lynch movie David Lynch never made. So it's not just about David Carradine. The ensemble cast's also great in this. We have the voice of Chucky, Brad Dourif as Weasel. And we have Paul L. Smith as Slew. And we have a couple of great character actors like Conrad Janis from the Buddy Holly story and Sidney Lassick, who played the pet shop owner in Alligator. But the real highlight of this one has to be the late, great David Carradine, as you've never seen him before, in the lead role of Pearl. So Mr. Carradine plays things completely straight, which really makes the performance completely straight, if you'll pardon the pun. And Carradine also wrote and performed the song Maybe It Ain't, which is used several times throughout the film. It's a bit of an earworm, this song, and you'll be humming it for days, I reckon, once you hear it. At times, this film does feel like a bit of a David Carradine vanity project, but as far as vanity projects go, Sonny Boy's a lot more successful than most. And the rest of the soundtrack's great as well. It sounds like a bit of a reworking of dueling banjos, just enough not to get sued. And all in all, Sonny Boy's an oddity that shouldn't be missed under any circumstances. So it makes absolutely no sense to me that Sonny Boy isn't more highly regarded out there. There's a lot of social commentary to be found in Sonny Boy. It's mainly about family and how families are formed and how you can't pick your family and so on and so forth. And it also pokes fun at the absurdity of ridiculous people wielding power and being feared and respected, even though it makes little to no sense. I think we've all experienced that before. And the whole world that Slew and Pearl have woven around themselves is completely surreal and ridiculous. But their grip on the town is so tight that nobody really seems to recognise how bizarre it all is. So that's another bit of commentary that you'll get used to just about anything. And I reckon Sonny Boy would make a great double bill with David Lynch's Blue Velvet. And if you're after something nice to enjoy with this look at a dysfunctional American family, I reckon a nice piece of blueberry pie and a long tall glass of iced tea would go down a treat. So that is 1989's Sonny Boy. They truly don't make them like this one anymore. Welcome to Fulci Metal Jacket, where we cover the kinds of films that lurk and loiter just beyond the mainstream. Today's film may appear at face value to be a rip-off of The Running Man, but it actually predates the Arnold Schwarzenegger vehicle by a whole 3 years, believe it or not. So Warriors of the Year 2072, aka Rome 2072 AD, the new Gladiators, comes to us from 1984. This one is directed by Lucio Fulci, who's more well known for Italian horror epics like Zombie, The Beyond, and City of the Living Dead. The premise of this one is eerily familiar to some of you, or any of you who've seen The Running Man, starring Arnold Schwarzenegger. So we're in a dystopian future where violent reality television reigns supreme. 7 Seas Television, broadcasting out of Atlantic City, New Jersey, has the #1 rated program on television, which is a program called Kill Bike, where competitors ride dirt bikes like chariots and try to knock each other off with all manner of medieval-style weapons. Now, the reigning Kill Bike champion at the moment is a guy called Drake, and I did get a little confused by 7 Seas as a kid, because I'm pretty sure the home video release of the new Gladiators was released by 7 Keys Video here in Australia. But I digress. Rival network WBS, based in Rome, are jealous of 7 Seas ratings, as you would be. And the best programming they have to offer is called The Danger Game, which is a kind of like a version of Fear Factor with Joe Rogan, but more tasteful. I mean, at least The Danger Game doesn't demand that contestants consume bodily fluids from a donkey, so that's a good start. And this network conceives a Kill Bike rip-off, as networks do, called Battle of the Damned, to be held in the old Colosseum in Rome. That's the historic site in Rome, that is, not the old WWF Colosseum video from the 90s. It's easy to confuse the two. Now, the contestants are not only a who's who of death row inmates, but they're also a who's who of amazing early 80s exploitation actors. So there's Al Cliver, Fred Williamson, and Al Yamanuchi. So their job is to fight to the death in the new Gladiator games. But real star power is needed, and it's time to set Kill Bike champion and all-round nice guy Drake up for a crime he didn't commit, of course, which is the murder of 3 guys who kill his wife, and I don't quite get that one. But anyway, now, if all of that sounds a bit familiar, that's because it is, because The Running Man movie does rip off a heap of plot points and elements from this Lucio Fulci film, which really is quite unique in the annals of early 80s Italian exploitation cinema. Usually it's the other way around. It really was the convention for Italian genre cinema of the early 80s to draw heavily on established Hollywood hits for their stories. So it really is quite unique and unusual to see an example such as this, where it was the Italians that came up with the original and innovative concept and Hollywood copied it. Quite shamelessly, I might add. At least this was the case in the early 80s. Nowadays, Hollywood's doing it quite a bit as well, whether it's adapting foreign films in above-board reimaginings or simply ripping things off enough not to get sued by the original Europeans that came up with the ideas. All's fair in love and war, I guess. Now, this movie was quite a departure for director Lucio Fulci, to say the least, and it was polarising for fans as well. I mean, a lot of people found the pace really slow and lethargic, and they described the new Gladiators as a bit boring. I think that's a little unfair myself. I mean, at times it's a little incoherent, I guess, but I don't know that I'd describe the new Gladiators as boring, to say the least. I mean, there's enough to hold up your interest here and so that you'll have a good time. The cinematography has this cool, murky, dreamy, misty look to it that I still don't know whether is intentional or not. They might have left the film reels out in the sun accidentally. But even still, it was pretty effective, especially on low-def home video back in the 80s, on 7 keys video. And there's some cool miniatures, there's a great synth score, and it's great to see some familiar post-apocalyptic alumni that you'll definitely recognise. There's Fred Williamson from Warriors of the Wasteland, there's Al Cliver from Endgame and 2020 Texas Gladiators, and lastly we have Al Yamanuchi from After the Fall of New York, the infamous Rat King. So this one's worth a watch purely to see Lucio Fulci take a stab at science fiction. It's a bit like how entertaining it'd be if you watched Quentin Tarantino have a crack at Star Trek, which they also talked about for some time. Now, I guess there might be some solid arguments for this one being a bit boring or a bit of a mess, but the curiosity value outweighs most, if not all, of the shortcomings as far as I'm concerned. And it is a must-see for anyone who's a fan of The Running Man. There's a fair bit of social commentary about reality TV, of course, and in that regard, the new Gladiators was a decade or two ahead of its time. Now, I reckon the new Gladiators would make a great double bill with Joe D'Amato's Endgame. So Endgame's another post-apocalyptic game show scenario that was popular in the early 80s. And I think if you're after something nice to enjoy with the new Gladiators, a cheap supermarket frozen spaghetti and meatballs washed down with an energy drink might do the trick. If you are snacking while watching this one, because let's face it, everything we eat in the future is going to be processed poison. And I guess one more thing, there's a particular whistling scene that you'll have trouble forgetting once you see it, and if you know, it goes something like this. And I won't give up my day job and start a whistling career because that was dreadful, but nevertheless I'll pop the trailer in the description, and I'll pop in where you can see this one, any Easter eggs that I might find on the new Gladiators that seem interesting. They'll all be in the description. The Ruins from 2008 is based on a novel of the same title by author Scott Smith, who also wrote a novel called A Simple Plan, which was adapted into a film by Sam Raimi. And the premise of The Ruins is that a group of young American people are on holidays at a resort in Mexico, where they're experiencing all the usual hazards and perils of listeria-contaminated ice in their drinks, sharing too many margaritas with suave Europeans with animal attraction, and all the other fun young perils of young people that they face when they're abroad. So 3 of them are sort of carefree and just want to hang around the pool and not experience any of that pesky local culture. But the 4th guy, he's studying medicine, and he's a bit of a buzzkill because he wants to drag them off to see some boring 20,000-year-old architecture that's an unexplained feat of engineering and a once-in-a-lifetime experience and all that jazz. You get one of those in every group, those pesky intellectuals. Anyway, they meet a European guy with animal magnetism who knows of some really cool Aztec ruins in the area, And of course, his natural charisma and the animal magnetism convinced the carefree trio to go along for the ride, and boring history and a curious mind convinces their mate, the medical student, to go along as well. But the titular ruins of the movie do, of course, hide a deep, dark secret of human sacrifice. And that's the premise of The Ruins. So I avoided this movie like smallpox unleashed by Spanish conquistadors when it was released, because at face value it sort of looked like a CGI heavy pedestrian jump scare monster movie to me, and I wasn't really interested in it at the time. Theatres were flooded with that sort of thing, but surprisingly, after seeing it the other day, The Ruins is quite well executed, and the premise is fairly novel actually, if you'll pardon the book pun. It is, of course, a killer plant movie set in an Aztec or Incan pyramid, and what CGI there is, thankfully, is used sparingly to such an extent that often you'll wonder if you actually saw that vine move or if it's just your mind playing tricks on you. So it's actually more of a body horror film than a killer plant movie at the end of the day. The Ruins is closer to David Cronenberg than it is to John Wyndham. The first act of this movie is a little bit slow. It's long-winded exposition with no real purpose or payoff, but that was a big thing in the 2005s or thereabouts. I remember Eli Roth's Hostel was a bit like that as well, and that might have been the worst offender for waffling for the first act. And others seemingly took their cue to follow that same formula for a few years as this movie did. Especially if the premise of the film wasn't quite feature length, which is sort of the case here, because it does feel like The Ruins would make a better short story at times. I can't help but think that it might have made a better segment of an anthology film like the Stephen King story, The Raft in Creepshow 2, for example. But overall, it's a fairly satisfying result, all in all, and it's held up a hell of a lot better than most horror entries of the time, and it is really worth a revisit or a visit if you haven't seen it before. Many of the body horror elements are genuinely unnerving, as is the behaviour of the locals, which is very creepy as well. And there's a fair bit of social commentary about tourists and ignorance of the places and the local populace where they're visiting and so on and so forth, which is interesting. And I reckon The Ruins would make a good double bill with David Cronenberg's Videodrome, just to give you a bit of a double dose of primal body horror, followed up with the excessive 80s body horror, David Cronenberg style. And if you're after something nice to enjoy along with this one, I reckon a chimichanga and an ice cold margarita or a mojito might be just what the doctor ordered, or the medical student in this film. Just make sure you're done eating during the boring first act before the second act starts up, because it is quite squeamish at times. So that's The Ruins from 2008. I'll link to the trailer in the description and any other little Easter eggs as always. So that's all we have time for tonight. Thanks once again for joining me here on the lobby card, where we celebrate, collate and disseminate all kinds of weird and wonderful movie reviews. So the lobby card, I try to upload a new one of these every few weeks or so, and the reviews themselves, they upload to the channel about once or twice a week, depending on time. And if you enjoyed what you saw today or tonight, whenever you're watching, and you'd like to find out more about Fulci Metal Jacket or the lobby card, please don't hesitate to like, subscribe and share, and comment below. Thanks for that. I look forward to seeing you next time.